Welcome to Pigeon River Farm, doing farming right. I'm Robert Brown, the owner of Pigeon River Farm. Thank you for viewing. In tonight's episode, we're going to talk about mastering pasture poultry with egg layers. Been in it a number of years. I'd like to share some of my knowledge in that area. I guess the first thing first, you need to come up with a market. So before you go into the poultry business, you better have a plan on how you're going to get this egg sold. If it's going to be on-farm sales, if it's going to be through a CSA, through a distribution system. Are you going to be just strictly on-farm sales where you don't, in most states, you don't necessarily need a license up to a certain amount of layers, or are you going to have a commercial license? So them are all decisions you have to make before you get going. But let's get into the meat and potatoes of the poultry business. First is start out with good laying hens. There's quite a debate here. I've tried the high performance birds. We've even had leghorns at one time. They're too high strung, don't do well on pasture. So we've settled in with a lot of the heritage breeds, from Rhode Island Reds to Wyandottes and kind of everything in between. We've tried some hybrids, and they've worked relatively well. But overall, I think getting a variety. What we've done is we constantly change out and add different breeds, layer breeds, to our stock. And it's kind of the evolution of experimenting, seeing what works, and it has actually worked very well. What you get out of that, even though we are buying in, we no longer incubate, we used to, but we're bringing in different genetics, different characteristics, and different interaction. You'll find certain breeds don't work as well as others, but you need to try this. We also, when you're getting chicks, first off, work with a very dependable, reputable hatchery. You're not incubating yourself. And the key with that is find out from others, do your research, and make sure that they are working with good genetic stock. You don't need to bring garbage into the farm. If you're bringing in poor genetics, even though it might have a lot of advertisement on it, but if it has poor genetics, you're going to have poor performance. So that input of the right chicks is critical. And then the whole process of making sure you have brooders, how many should I get at a time, all that are different dynamics. Here's what we have settled down to. We currently have around 400 layers in operation. We are moving up to 600. So we're a small operation, not tiny, but we're a small operation. But we now have gone to the point of bringing in 50 chicks at a time. We used to do a whole batch for the summer. We'd order them up in, say, May, and we'd order a couple hundred birds. Not anymore. What we do now is we go 2 to 3 week increments, and I constantly bring in another 50. I'm no longer using our we had large brooders, and no longer using them. I went back to a very simple system, extremely simple. Just an old cattle tank, thermal sensor in it, heat lamp, wood chips, and get the chicks off to a good start. I can keep an eye on them. We come in fairly early, so I've actually this year and last year, I think I made the year before, first batch we brought home, it was snowing out. So we were starting relatively early. So there's a timing factor, so there's some logic behind bringing them in early, and that's to need them to get started laying for winter. Let's talk about the eggs. Ultimately, what you want to produce is the high quality egg. Well, it starts with the chick, and it starts with the timing of the chick. So you typically figure in 5 to 6 months from hatch to first egg lay. That's going to be critical. So think about the sun, the solstice, where you're at as far as the fall, where you're at as far as how much light is available. Will the birds start to lay eggs before we go into that winter slump? Well, that's a key component. Okay, let's get back to the chicks themselves. We're animal welfare approved, and it's a certification we're very proud of. We've worked very hard to achieve the certification level we have, and it requires a lot of special dynamics. And one being is we need to make sure them chicks are basically, we'd say, fresh, meaning from the incubator to our brooder has got to be a very short period of time. So we work with a semi-local supplier that gives 1 day delivery. So most of these chicks are actually brought on a delivery truck to a local feed mill where I order them from. And so they're brought up, so they literally leave their facility, driven a couple hours, located here. I get the call, and from the time the truck drops them off to the time they're in my hatchers, or my brooder is only about 30 minutes. So we need to document all that. So animal welfare approved requires us to document it. So when the call comes in from the feed mill, I need to document that. When I put them into the brooder, I need to document that. So that's the whole process, and that's in the animal welfare certification, or any certifications you get involved with, shows credibility. The consumer is very interested in that. So first thing to think about here, and we all love the animals, we love taking care of them, but the consumer also wants to know that we do it right. So that's key. Next, we need to get them chicks to be familiar with pasturing. So what we use is a simple trick. We actually use our cattle wagon or cattle trailer. When I'm not hauling cattle, it's got chicks in it. So what normally we do is we go to transition them. So before they're introduced to the larger birds, the adult birds, we put them into the cattle trailer, and then they're moved around on pasture and have a chance of being totally separated to get exposure. So that technique works. So you have to make sure you keep the chicks, young pullets, up to about 3 months, 4 months, separated from the adult birds. From disease is a major factor. You also they can have a pecking order, they can be kind of vicious toward them. So there's a lot of other dynamics. Now, in that upbringing, you need to make sure they stay healthy. And since we run all organic practices here, there's no pharmaceuticals, so there's no antibiotics. That's not an option. Well, we've been using homeopathic, natural procedures kind of forever. And what I have kind of found works the best is organic apple cider vinegar goes into their drinking water on a controlled basis. You need to find the instructions for that. I tell you what mine is because yours may differ because of the pH level of the water and so on. Next is we've been using the Dr. Paul's products for poultry, and that has worked out real well. I have my own mix. It's a soy-free mix, so we have no soybean in it and zero chemicals. So the chick feed has to be made differently than the adult layer from a protein level. So I have my mix for that, and then I have a mix that we get to when they're actually at a layer level. So feed, affordable feed, but high quality. Make sure you have some control over it, or buy from a real good brand. There's some excellent companies out there that provide feed. So do your research again on that. So what we do is it's locally produced. The feed mill's only a couple miles away. I spec everything out that I need. Birds come to us, or feed comes to us for our birds on a custom level. I do vary my ingredients from summer and winter, different dynamics because they're out in pasture. Okay, so now we get our chicks to the point that they're introduced to the main flock. Well, we use a chickenmobile, we call it. It's a large chopper wagon that's modified, and the layers stay in there, and then we'll have an additional gravity wagon or chopper wagon that we bring along that has roosts in it, and that gives additional sleeping space. So that is taken out on pasture and then moved from paddock to paddock, following the cattle and the goats. That has worked very well, and the nutrition value of them eggs are just off the chart. So that technique, so you got to think about how your land is laid out. You know, we have mainly open, we're completely surrounded with woods and predators. But I have all cleared land here that the birds are on, and it's all fenced. So we do have a fairly good buffer. We just will have a few challenges with predators. But for the most part, the system we have is pretty predator resistant. Okay, now let's get back to having them multi-species. For me, that has been one of the best things. I've never raised chickens in a mono environment. It's always been with the cattle and goats. We had cattle and sheep at one time. And then the chickens follow. They're the cleanup. They do an incredible job. They also, when poultry are out on pasture, they do not like tall grass. Tall grass would not encourage the birds to go out and prosper. They will not feed well off the grasses that are just close by. They need to get out there. Need to get them broadleaf. That's where the protein is. So your dandelions, plantain, all that, clovers, alfalfas, all of them are critical. So they need to get out there. And how they get out there is the cattle will do their grazing, and then typically 1 to 3 days after, I'll be coming through with the chicken mobile. There is some logic, and I love this logic. A lot of people wait longer so the fly population gets into the manure patties and so on. That works good, but we want to have the chickens have some interaction with the cattle, and there's some logic to that. What I have seen is the chickens will actually get into the herd of cattle, at least some of them will, and they will stay with the cattle for a good chunk of the day. So having a paddocks relatively close and stay within the sequence has been something that's, again, worked really well. So 1 to 3 days, but typically we are more often to be 1 day behind. So the cattle just came off that paddock, the chickens are brought onto it, and away we go. Okay, so now we got the chickens out there on pasture. They're doing a great job. They're eating, foraging, doing very well. I know a magic question here is, and here's been our experience, our feed consumption in the peak of summer when insects are at their best, highest level, and there's lots of broadleafs out there, we use about 1/3 less feed than we do in the tempered time of the winter. I emphasize in a tempered time. When we get an extreme cold, then it's going to be different because the birds, we even switch out the diet to give them as much energy feed as they can. But that's only when we have the extreme cold. Even though we're up here in the middle of Wisconsin, for people down south, this is extreme cold most of the time. For us, we don't view it that way. But when it gets to the point that we get a good run at it, in the wintertime, when it starts going below 0 Fahrenheit, that's when we start to worry. Okay, the next thing here is the rotation I told you about with the birds. Next thing is egg management. So we have nesting boxes that come along for the ride, and depending on the temperature, I either collect the eggs once or twice a day. So if the temperature is moderate, I would have to say 80 degrees or below, then the eggs are gathered once a day. If we get into the high 80s, into the 90-degree Fahrenheit range, then we get them twice a day. We do carry refrigeration equipment on our tow vehicle for our chicken mobile. We keep a refrigerator in there, and that refrigerator is intended, how we work that is if I get eggs twice a day, I'm extremely hot, the first batch of eggs are put into that refrigerator, then the whole batch is collected and taken back to our coolers. So that's the pasture portion of it during the tempered time of the year. So we talk spring, summer, and fall. Now we get into getting close to Thanksgiving. The birds got to come off the pasture. We're starting, the weather's turning in. We're starting chances of snow, cold. A lot of the green has now disappeared. We are set up with 3 very large high tunnels. I started out with 1, went to 2, now I have 3. They're all interconnected, as you can see here, with a layer barn in between. So the winter over for the birds, we have a layer barn where they roost. Predominantly is where they have their layer nesting boxes. So nesting boxes are key, and I want to address that. So out on pasture or in the layer barn, doesn't matter. The rule for us is one nesting box per 5 laying hens. So I'll just get that again. One nesting box per 5 laying hens. And that's for a comfort factor. And then ours are the standard size 12 by 12 nesting box. They, for the convenience of the bird and its health, and it's been through studies found that that is the optimum efficiency there. So they go into for the winter, they reside in this superstructure, and it's relatively large. We now have 10,000 square feet under plastic, and then we have another couple hundred square feet, was it 400, I think it is 400 square feet with the layer barn. And I said it only has kind of one purpose there. The birds are rotated through the vegetation that's in the high tunnel as long as it lasts. So we try to run that pretty deep. I try a variety of different crops. This year we're going to, and once our watermelons that are in there now, or once they're out of there, I'm going to go real heavy this year with turnips and radish and so on. I'm going to try something a little different. I tried greens of different types. So that's where the birds reside. They prosper during the winter time. So when it's brutally cold outside, it's 0 degrees Fahrenheit, the wind is blowing, but the sun is shining, and the snow is flinging around, inside a high tunnel it may often be 70 or 80 degrees. So the birds just are in there eating. The greens are left, and they're dusting in the dirt, and they are just very, very active. You can see that in the quality of eggs. I've compared to some of our competition, and it's very obvious when they have access to sunlight. So that's going to be another key. So building a greenhouse type structure integrated into your laying barn, if you're going to really do pasture poultry right, is key. You know, we dual purpose ours, but you don't have to. That could be there. You could go with a wire screen during the summer, and it could be, plastic during the winter. Okay, so that gets us to the point. We got the birds healthy, doing well. Now let's talk about the eggs themselves and getting that process. So we do have, at our size of our business, we have it set up where we have a egg washing machine. I'm just absolutely pleased with. We had it for years, and it just works every day, works perfect. And then we have an egg candling sorting system and very good workflow. We have a dedicated room because we are state licensed for I guess we'd call food processing. That's just a kind of a catch-all for anybody that produces anything of this nature. And we have our Wisconsin state egg license. Excuse me. So between that, we have 2 inspections a year. One by the health department of our county, and the other one going to be from the egg inspector. Now we have a good system set up. We got a big commercial refrigerator that takes the bulk of the load for the eggs. That from the raw ones coming in wire pails to finished or washed and sorted to finished into cartons and master cartons and ready to go out the door. So once they're getting ready to go out the door, we got to think about what is our customer going to see. And with animal welfare approved, you can see we got a pretty darn nice carton here. That's a real beauty. They've done a heck of a nice job with it. And we got our eggs in there, nicely presented. And then we make sure with every master carton, we put in a brochure about the farm. And just a write-up so the store staff, or they can set it out, depending on where they're going, they can set it out and it gives an explanation of what we do, what we're about. And so it's just a handy little thing. Animal welfare approved. It talks about their label. And so in every master carton, we include one of these just to show that the customer that we're very serious about what we're doing here. So it explains the process, why the label is so important, the whole thing. So that's critical to the consumer. And then in every egg carton goes just a little flyer here explaining a little bit about the animal welfare approved through a greener world. And again, it gives us that credibility, so people get to know about our farm, they get to know about the certification, and they feel comfortable with the product. And we can get a honest price. The one thing is, when you do high quality product, when you're producing a high quality product, it takes high quality inputs. The high quality input is going to be expensive. I won't even talk about inflation right now. That's a whole nother video. But the high quality product cost, the high quality workmanship, everything, this whole infrastructure. So we get a good price, a good fair price. I don't pull any punches. I don't cut any corners. We do it right from the very beginning. And we hope our customers understand and in turn are willing to pay the price of this high quality product. Because it's a little joke here, but it's either us or the doctor. We try to get this in there. So from the very top, it's a good business. You can do well. Don't try to. So many farms use the eggs as purely a secondary. Well, they got a few laying hens around back. They throw in some cheap feed, the cheapest stuff they can get, and they sell them. And they're really selling a substandard product. It may not be much better than you're getting from the big CAFOs, the big confined operation poultry houses. When you're going to be a pro, labels are important, identification, telling your story, and representing your product. That way you can get a high quality product to the consumer and they're willing to pay for it. So these are some of the guidance I have on it. I have a variety of other videos that cover little nuances of the business. But I hope this gave you kind of an overview of how we do it and the trail that it takes to get there. Well, I thank you very much and have a great evening.